Hello fellow lovers of the liminal and the weird, and welcome to another video by Liminal Spaces. I have finally finished Gene Wolfe's Shadow of the Torturer, and I want to give a quick review of it. And of course, in the next couple of days I will release a deep reading of the text itself. If you'd like to watch that, of course, that will contain spoilers. So this is more of a fantasy novel, which isn't something we do as much on this channel, although we have in the past. I talked about the first book in Mary Stewart's Merlin trilogy earlier on. You can check that out if you're interested in that. And I do plan to eventually do Ursula K. Le Guin's Tales from Earthsea. No, A Wizard from Earthsea in the future. I enjoy fantasy. In fact, I think that as a child my reading progressed, or as a teenager my reading progressed from horror to fantasy, and then I didn't really get into science fiction until I was a younger adult, and then this kind of rehash of science fiction for me for this channel. So this is a fantasy book, although I think that there is an argument that could be made that it's also sci-fi, which is interesting. I feel like there might be robots in this world. I definitely know there's some future tech, and in many ways it could be considered a dystopian novel, but I don't want to give too much away here. So before I get started, let me give you just a quick introduction to the plot here. Our main character is Severian. I think that's how you say his name. Others might pronounce it differently, but that's how I read it. And he is an apprentice to the Torturers Guild. And he lives in a citadel in the middle of a massive city. But he doesn't really get out outside of the citadel and the surrounding areas much at all. In fact, he really only knows the way of the Torturers Guild. This guild, when I first read the book, was kind of confusing to me, but it is exactly what it sounds like it is. It's a guild made to torture and execute criminals. Which scared me as I read, because I was like, boy, we're going to see some gory stuff. And there's a couple of gory concepts, but this was not a gory novel. I don't think people that are afraid of gore need to turn away from this one, because really, truly, the descriptions were not that intense. I think I've read worse stuff, gorier stuff, of course, in horror, but also in just regular literary fiction. So yeah, you don't really have anything to fear gore-wise from this novel. That's not really the point of it. But yeah, the Torturers Guild were interesting to me because they are a guild that is made to torture. And it was really interesting learning the system, the honor that they took, and the pride that they took in their jobs. And this seems to be a world that is based around a lot of different guilds. Like, the guild system is huge in this world. And we open with Severian getting caught up in a political battle that he doesn't really understand. And he protects this really important revolutionary figure. He actually saves this person's life. And the person's name is Vodalus. And Vodalus, in thanks, gives him a gold coin, which is very rare. But anyway, that major event happens at the beginning, and then we just see him slowly go through the steps of his guild. He becomes a journeyman and has to go on a lot more errands for the guild. And he meets other guilds through that, and we slowly learn about this society through Severian growing up in it. And this is one of the ways that fantasy does world building that I really enjoy. And that I guess I would refer to as the Alice in Wonderland style, in the sense that you have a person that usually goes through a liminal space, right? The rabbit hole or the wardrobe in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, the tornado in The Wizard of Oz. They go through this liminal space to journey to another world, at which point they are a stand-in for us, the reader. They do not understand the world, just like we do not understand the world. So everything has to be explained to them as they go on. Another example of this would be Harry Potter, right? In a weird sense, Diagon Alley works as this liminal journey from, or even the train ride, right? Platform 9 3/4. These places work as liminal spaces that introduce Harry to a new world, but he is like us, just a regular human that doesn't know anything about the wizarding world, so everything has to be introduced to him. This is, in my opinion, the best way to build a world for world building. It is also the easiest. And a lot of science fantasy and modern fantasy have taken this idea, but didn't want to be as extreme as they travel to another world. So what they did is created characters that were isolated for some reason or another, kept in only one space, that then have to go on a journey in their world. It's still their world, but they go on a journey and they don't understand their world very much. A good example of this is Dune. Dune, Paul Atreides has to go to Arrakis and doesn't know how that world works. So he still can be a stand-in for the reader, even though it's his world. Another example of this is Star Wars. Luke Skywalker grew up on this backwater planet and has to learn how the universe works. And that's also how Shadow of the Torturer works. He knows his clan. He knows his guild. He knows his tower and the area around it, which includes a graveyard that he likes to hang out in a lot. So this is a story about Severian taking steps to learn about his world so that the world can be explained to us as it goes. I think the difference in reading this, and so that's basically the plot synopsis, is the adventures of Severian as he goes further and further and further out into his world, a world that he does not understand, so that we are able to stand in his place and learn about the world as he learns about the world. The difference between this book and other fantasy books that I have mentioned here is that this book did not have a through line that the other ones did. For instance, Alice is looking for the way out of Wonderland. She's trying to get out of Wonderland and get back to her world. Harry Potter has Voldemort that he's fighting the whole time. Luke needs to... What is Luke doing in Star Wars? I haven't watched Star Wars in a really long time. Paul Atreides is, of course, fighting the betrayal that happens on Arrakis, and then is falling into his destiny set up by the Bene Gesserit. All of these stories have an overarching main plot that occur simultaneously to the exploration of this other world. And I feel like The Shadow of the Torturer did not have that. For me, it is mystery upon mystery upon mystery piled up. And I found it, and this is personal to me, difficult to find a key towards solving these mysteries. I didn't feel like I was ever given textual direction, that it was just, I don't want to say blundering, but Severian, maybe it was just blundering. He was just happening into each of these almost vignettes, these stories with no ending that he falls into over and over and over again, that it made it slightly hard reading for me. But I see the draw, and one of the draws is his prose. Some of his prose is just absolutely beautiful, and at other times it didn't work for me as much because he goes back and forth to this from this very straightforward style to this very philosophical style. The straightforward style works fine. The philosophical style is brilliant in flashes, and then at other times I find that it didn't really lead anywhere. It was philosophical, yes, but it didn't give me, like I said earlier, a key to figure out what the novel's about. And I do want to state that this is all about interpretation. When a piece of art is abstract enough that it can be read from many different angles, which this book can, when a piece of art is that abstract, I think we've talked about this in the channel before, what it comes down to is whether or not the person experiencing the art is able to come up with an interpretation that makes them feel like all of the abstractness makes sense, right? Another way to look at it is if you can find a key in the text to the riddle of the text itself and figure out the text through your key, then you will really enjoy that, and it will be a worthwhile piece of art that has an abstract quality. Sometimes in this novel, I didn't feel like I could find the key, and I know that a lot of people really loved it, and that might turn them off to my interpretation. But it did feel like that I at times that I couldn't find the key. However, I'm not saying I didn't like this novel. I really enjoyed this novel. It was a really good time. I felt like I couldn't read it half-assed. I had to give it 100% of my attention, which means it took me a lot longer. And I feel like there are passages that I don't understand as well as I wish I could have. But I enjoyed it. And I think it's a worthy read because I feel like many people, this is their favorite novel of all time. Many people that I respect, this is their favorite novel of all time. And that alone makes it worth a read. I also feel that this is probably only 1/4 of a story. This didn't feel like it had an arc in and of itself. He got from the gate of his tower to the gate of his city, and all the things that happened in between there are the story. But it's not a story like we're used to, that's the inverted check mark, right? That has the ground situation and then the rising action and then the climax and then the denouement. This book didn't really follow that structure, and I feel like the entire story might. And what I mean by that is this is the first of 4 novels, and I feel like I've just read a fourth of the story. Like it just ends, and I'm sure the second novel is just going to pick up right there and keep going. So I don't feel like I can really judge this because I don't feel like I have the whole story. I feel like I have a million really intriguing mysteries that I'm assuming the rest of the series is going to solve, which makes me feel like you can't just read this first book and say what you think of it without having read the rest. So I do plan in the future that I will probably take on the rest of these novels and see what I think. Okay, I know that was very convoluted. So there's great prose, masterful and mysterious storytelling, but also, in my opinion, more mysteries are created than can be solved in this first book, which makes it a slightly hard read. But do I recommend it? I absolutely recommend it. I think everybody that loves science fiction or fantasy should give this one a read. It could quickly become your favorite book of all time, as it has many, many people's. In the future, I will read the rest. I'm not going to jump on the second one right away. I got to let this one percolate for a while, but eventually I do plan to read the rest of these so that I feel like I can actually talk about the entire story instead of just the first fourth. All right. What did you think of Shadow of the Torturer? Is this one of your favorite books of all time? Did you dislike it or like it or just kind of felt average about it? Let me know in the comments. And thank you very much for watching this to the end. If you liked it, please click like. If you like this kind of content, please click subscribe. We'll be doing a lot more of it in the future. And thank you so much for watching.